Hey again, it's The Upgrade. My name is Gary Muttley, and coming to us live on location from an undisclosed location is the one and only
Len Carmichael, Landmine Studios. I'm actually on Route 1 right now, not too far from Princeton. I had band practice tonight. Well, we were recording or whatever, and it was a good time. I blasted out 4 songs in under an hour and learned them at the same time. So, hey, good night.
And you haven't really played guitar in how long?
Since June-ish. I really hadn't touched a guitar in basically 6 months.
Wow.
I'm not a great guitar player, but I can follow along. So Brian, the other guitar player in the band, was sitting there playing guitar, so I'm just staring at his hands, mimicking what he was doing, and then once I had it down, I just played the song. So each song's about like a minute and a half, 2 minutes long. It's not that hard to learn these songs. It's about 15 minutes each.
You guys have a name for this new project?
It's called Dead Torches.
Nice.
So that's what we're going to be doing in the next, whenever COVID gets done. But I think we're going to be dropping a record sometime in the next couple months.
Cool. I assume it'll be recorded at Landmine Studios?
No, actually, Chris Ross is the drummer of the band, and he actually runs a recording studio at his house. And that's why I went up there, was to record there with him on his setup. So the way it works is I actually brought a DI with me, and I recorded all my clean tracks at his place. He's going to email them to me. I'll clean them up a little bit at my spot, and reamp them through whatever is on my amp wall, whatever I decide is like my tone for this thing, and then send him back final tracks and move on with my life.
Nice. So you're working both studios then?
Yeah, but it's going to officially come out of his. I don't really care. It's not, like, that isn't the focus of why I'm doing it.
Right.
Like doing the reamping at my studio, it's just I'm a little bit of a control freak when it comes to my tone, so I wanted it to sound the way I want it to sound. But then he can fuck with it with EQ or whatever on his own.
That's cool. Little different approach. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, typically I would have just done that at home if I actually knew the songs, like, in any succinct fashion, but I don't. So, now I know them, sort of, and I could probably just go home and play it again if I had to.
Listen, just live dangerously. Do it by the seat of your pants. Who cares?
Well, I mean, I'm driving and talking on a fucking video call, so I'm already living dangerously. What are we talking right now?
Yeah, because I'm sure that's the only time you live dangerously.
Well, I at least put the seatbelt on, so,
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Typically, I'm going to tell you straight out, I'm not really a seatbelt guy, because when I was a kid, so I grew up in the time when the seatbelt was mom's arm. So you ride in the car and she stops short, sticks out the right arm real hard, and that was seatbelt. Like, that was not a great seatbelt, but that's how it fucking worked in the 80s. So when I started driving in the early 90s, I sometimes put my seatbelt on, sometimes I didn't. And 90% of the time, if I'm not on a highway, I do not have my seatbelt on. Why? I don't know. Just not comfortable.
Well, that's cool, because with the subject matter that we usually talk about on this show, I don't think there's any cops listening.
Well,
So.
I don't care if they're listening or not. Come get them. Come get me.
So we talk about a bunch of things on The Upgrade, and we've kind of talked about how our goal is to tell people stories and give people a little bit of a different perspective on things. So tonight we're going to do things a little different because it's a story that I'm involved with. And hopefully by telling some of this stuff, first of all, if you're a fan, you'll enjoy hearing some of the stories. But also, even if you're not a fan, there's kind of a journey that we went on in a way that hopefully will enlighten some people. So we're going to kind of focus on that a little bit. And our guest is one of my best friends, my brother for many, many years, and my bandmate for just about 20 years now, Mr. Malone Ranalli from Billy Club Sandwich.
Yo, what's up, everybody? What's going on, Len? What's going on, Molly?
What's happening?
Yo, welcome to The Upgrade.
Thank you. I mean, thank you for having me. It's it took a little bit for us to get on the same schedule. I've been working a little bit of a hectic schedule during COVID. So, but like, yeah, I appreciate you guys working with me and being able to like sit down and work this out. I'm pretty excited tonight. So
I'm sure you're happy to not be yelling at people for not wearing a mask right now.
Yeah, it's or yelling, at people to take their mask off. That's also something that I do. So,
Wait, why do you yell at people to take their mask off?
So,
or should I not ask that?
No, it's fine. I don't really care. So I deal with pretty much, in my job, I deal with a cross-section of society that's the entire cross-section of the entire society. And, we do license renewal and duplication at where I work. And so I get complete opposite ends of the spectrum a lot. So I get people that are like, I'm not wearing a mask. It's my God-given right to not wear a mask. And it's oppression. And like, I'm like, okay, but you're talking to a guy that's been wearing a mask outside in 95-degree weather for 8 hours. So like, save it for somebody else, pal. And then I get the exact opposite of the spectrum when I get germaphobes and people that are deathly afraid of the virus who do not want to remove their mask to take their photo for their identification. So, and I'm like, is there a place where a dude could catch a break in here or because it can happen, within an hour of each other. I'll get somebody that almost refuses to take their mask off to take their photo. And then I have somebody that is refusing to wear their mask to come inside. So
you're getting it from both sides. Fun. That's awesome.
I'm telling you right now, I don't know that I could do that job because I would just lose my shit all day on people. It's hard enough for me to go out in public right now. And like, I was so earlier today, I had my car in the shop. So I went out to my car 2 days ago or whatever, and I went to start driving, and all I hear is this like horrible scraping noise. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? And I get out of the car, and I'm looking, and my fucking driver's side brakes are just locked. So I didn't drive the car for that day, and I took it to the shop this morning. But I get to the shop, and the guys are nice guys and all, but like, I get it. You're a mechanic, and you don't really give a fuck about anything because you've got fucking ice running through your veins from hanging out under cars that could fall on you at any moment. But put on your fucking mask. I don't care that it's your business or not. We should all just agree to put the fucking mask on when it's supposed to be on. So I'm like standing there, and I'm like, do I argue with this dude that is going to be fixing my car? He could easily just not fix my car if I piss him off. So I got to play this fucking game. And if I was getting paid to stand there and argue with people, after the third argument of the day, I'd be like, just take the fucking mask off. Just put the fucking mask on. Like, we know what we're doing here. Just stop fucking with me.
Well,
so I commend you for doing this job because I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, being able to do a job and then wanting to do the job are two very, very different things. Like, I don't want to do this job anymore, but I get a lot of paid time off, which is great for when, Billy Club is allowed to tour because there's not a pandemic and stuff. So, and I get paid decent. So, it is what it is. But, yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with you because, I mean, me. I think you've seen me, put up with a situation for around 2.5 to 3 minutes before I actually grab someone or smack them or something. So,
2 or 3 minutes might be a little long. I think you're giving yourself a little extra minutes.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just my age. I don't know.
Oh, man.
Yeah, sound guys, but things like that.
Money talks.
Money talks, and paid time off talks, too. Let me tell you. Money's great, and you and I have had that discussion before, Len. I mean, as far as things go, you and I are pretty ambitious dudes, and and stuff, but work-life balance is pretty big for me too. So being able to be like, hey, I'm gonna go for 10 days to Europe and play with my band is huge for me. So right. a ton of paid time off. So some people were joking with me the other day. They were like, you need to wear a T-shirt to work that says I only stay for the paid time off.
Yeah, I'm getting yelled at my job right now for not taking any of my... So, because here's the deal. My job sent us home on March 9th. They were like, you'll be home for 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll be back in. No big deal. Just go work from your house. 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, they sent out a message. Hey, you're going to be working home until July. So at that point, it'll have been like 15 months working at home. I don't take it for granted, but also because I'm working from home in my sweatpants, I haven't taken really any time off. And my boss pulled me aside 2 weeks ago, and he's like, yo, you still have 35 days left for the year to take off, and we don't have 35 days left in the year. What are you doing? And I'm like, wow, I don't know, man. He's like, just start taking time off. Just disappear as much as you want. And I was like, all right, bet.
So you've got to use it in the calendar year, huh?
I can only roll over 5 days.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
yeah, I used to
wow.
have that. Now I could just stack it up. Like, I haven't used any paid time off. Like, my shit is so stacked right now. Like, I've probably got a good month in the bank right now. Like a solid 4 weeks of time now.
So the other problem is I would have normally just taken the time from Christmas to New Year's off, but they changed things 2 years ago, and now we automatically get that no matter what, paid off every year from December 22nd through January 4th. We're off.
So you can't even use it then?
I can't even use it then. So now I'm like, I just lost a whole bunch of other days that I would have normally just taken off to free money. I mean, I'm getting free money. I'm not complaining about it. But that means I worked too much all year. But it's like, where the fuck was I going to go? It was COVID, quarantine, nothing's open. I'm like, what am I going to do, take the day off and just sit on my couch? I'm already just sitting on my couch. I'm already just sitting on my fucking couch anyway.
I mean, I can roll over 120 hours. And
not bad.
I used 140 something hours this year, and I'm still going to roll over 100.
Wow.
Jesus Christ. That's a lot of paid time, bro.
Well, that's why I'm saying, like, you know.
That's why you're putting up with all that shit.
Yeah, I mean, like, because, like, and, like, you know, some shit happened, and me and my girl broke up, and I was like, yo, I need to take a week off right now because I got to find a place to live and move in. And he was like, okay, I'll see you in a week, you know? And then, like, you know, like, I can do stuff, you know, like, you know, or I could just be like, yo, I need to just, you know, it's a stressful job, and it's a lot, and it's a lot of mental stress. So I'll just look at my boss and be like, yo, I'm leaving right now, and I'll be back on Friday. And he'll know why, you know, like,
because these
like,
people are wild,
right? So
let me tell you something right now. I'm gonna get you a shirt that says, and it's gonna say on the front of the shirt, "You're lucky that I get a lot of PTO."
There you go.
Because if there wasn't a PTO, they might regret it.
The PTO is saving your life right now.
Yeah.
Little do you know. So let's go back in history a little bit, because we want to talk about Billy Club, and there's a lot of history before I joined the band. So let's get into that a little bit. When did Billy Club really start?
So, you know, Billy Club started actually about 30 years ago now.
Almost to the day, because I did see that posted on the Facebook page.
Yeah, almost to the day. I was playing bass at that time, and the original guitar player, his name was Rod. Me and him were good friends, and we were into hardcore, and we would like wanted to like just start a band. And a good friend of mine, James Kosis, was a drummer, and we started jamming out. And we didn't really have a singer. We had a couple of singers that would pop in, pop out, but we didn't have like a solid lineup. And things started to change. Interestingly enough, Glenn's introduction into the band was because was because what did I just do? Oh, there we go. Was because the original drummer was having some issues with addiction himself, and he split. He broke out. He ran away. Me and Rod were like, well, I don't know, what can we do? And I was like, yo, I know this drummer. Let's jam with him. And that's kind of how Glenn came into the fold. And
you guys all knew each other from high school, right?
Yeah. Well, Rod went to a different high school. I actually met Rod at a Battle of the Bands in Harrison, New York. He was going to White Plains High School. Me and Glenn went to Mamaroneck High School.
Okay.
And I knew Glenn from freshman year, and I think we met on the layup line for tryouts for basketball. Like, I was wearing maybe a Rip T-shirt or an Anthrax T-shirt. He was wearing an Anthrax T-shirt, something like that. And then he was like, "Yo, you like metal and hardcore?" And then we just started kicking it, and then we became friends. And I met Rod at a Battle of the Bands. It was like a Battle of the Bands, and then a huge mosh pit broke out because one of the bands that was playing was sick. And we met and we started hanging out. And that's how, the three of us kind of knew each other, as Glenn was with me at that Battle of the Bands. And that's kind of how Billy Club started. I mean, me and Rod started writing riffs and songs, and Glenn joined the fold after Kosis left. And and we started playing. And me and Rod were actually it was a Sunday morning, and we were on Orchard Beach in the Bronx, and we were getting fucked up. And I remember I was drinking Ballantine's grenades.
Nice.
And we were like, yo, let's roll this blunt and go smoke this blunt. And we were chopping it up. I remember I was fucked up. It was a Sunday morning at 10:30, 11 in the morning, and we're rolling down the boardwalk on Orchard Beach, and we're huffing this blunt, and we ran into Martin, and I had known Martin from Bond Street and shit like that, and I was like, yo, you want to smoke this? And he was with his family, and he's like, yeah, hold on, but I don't want them to see me, they can't see me smoking this. And I was like, all right. And so we kind of kept it on the down low as much as you could when you're huffing a White Owl log, that shit was had the whole beach thinking. And what's funny is I was actually on TV that day because there was a Spanish language dance show that was filming on the beach that day. Oh man. And it was for it was on Telemundo or one of those and it was a weekend dance show that they would play salsa and merengue and stuff, and people were dancing, and we were in the crowd. Me and Rod were in the crowd and shit. And so
and just to be clear, Martin was not performing on that dance show, right?
No, he was not. I think he wanted to, but
he tried.
He tried, but they didn't let him on. And I'm being dead serious. I'm pretty sure that he asked to get on the show. And so anyway, we were just talking with Martin, and we started kicking it and whatnot. And we were like, yeah, we got this band, and it's a hardcore band, and we are looking for a singer, but we're looking for somebody that is bilingual. And he was like, well, what about me? And because I'm saying, you know him. I mean, Len, you know him. You know exactly how he asked. He was like, oh, what about me? And then we were like,
yeah,
okay, fuck it. Why don't you come down and try out? And it was 100 years ago. So he wrote his number down on
this was pre-cell phones.
Yeah,
this was what, 90? What year? 94?
It was 94, 95, because he joined in 95, I think. So I think it was probably 95.
Okay.
And we had maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 songs written, and he came in, and we were like, oh shit, that's chemistry, it worked. It was what was supposed to happen, I think.
Yeah.
And Little did I know what the years had in store for us. But, it worked. And so we started recording not too long after that, and we put out a demo. And it was terrible. It was horrendous.
I just remember you getting the CD from Glenn to learn the songs when I joined the band. And we always just referred to it because I listened to it and it's in this fucked up tuning. And I was just like, yo, I'll just learn the songs when we get together. and then so we've since referred to it as Tune to Rod.
Tune to Rod.
It's somewhere. It's definitely not like C. It's like somewhere between C and D.
Yeah.
Like it's just some fucked up tuning that was obviously not done with a tuner.
No. And then we played a couple of shows. We played a show for you.
Yes. Which actually is on. There's a picture from that show on the back of the 7-inch, if I remember right, because you're playing my bass.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. It's on the back of the Hold the Baloney 7-inch.
Hey, Len, you want to hear a story about?
I absolutely want to hear a story.
What the fuck was I getting myself into? I booked a show before I was in Billy Club. Because let's back up a little bit. Malone was the last one that I met in the band. I didn't meet him. I was at the second Billy Club show, which was in the basement of the Pyramid. I missed the first show at Wetlands. I was probably working or something.
What kind of fan are you?
I know. It was terrible.
You missed the first fucking show? Come on.
And I think Irate played that show in the Pyramid basement also.
They did.
So that was when I first met Malone. But before that, I booked a show when I was playing with my old band Distance, who we've talked about before. I booked a show at the Lion's Den in Manhattan, and I booked Billy Club on the show, and I blew a fit because Martin showed up crazy late. Martin showed up so late, I told these dudes, I was like, yo, you guys don't even have time to tune your instruments. You're just going to use our fucking instruments.
And what was the response?
They were like, okay. And then they probably yelled at Martin, because I'm pretty sure I yelled at Martin, because I had been friends with, like I said, I didn't meet Malone until that second show, but I was friends with Martin, as we've talked about on the podcast, since 92 or 93, and I was friends with Glenn not long after that, and I didn't meet Rod or Malone until later at that show. But then after that show, I booked them for the Lions Den show, and Martin showed up stupid late, like after the time they were supposed to play. I had to switch people around.
That's one of the biggest pet peeves I have about playing or booking shows is bands willfully showing up late. Because I always feel like there's a ploy in that late show up. I never feel like it's just like, oh, you really did get stuck in traffic. No, you just didn't really want to play the time I gave you, and now you're acting like an asshole. Not saying that was necessarily this situation, but that's how I feel.
This situation was all Martin.
Just being Martin.
Martin. But somehow, years later, when the opportunity presented itself, I still joined the band and put up with his bullshit. So
yeah, that show was sick though. Like
that was a good show.
Cold Front was on that show, right?
Yep. Cold Front was on that show. I think District 9 was on that show.
Yep.
There were a few bands that I had on that show that ended up canceling. CB's ended up booking against me just to try and kill. I was trying to start doing matinees at that place, and then it just didn't work out. It was just too much headache. Singers showing up late and shit. But anyway, so the point of that story is that on the back of the first Billy Club 7-inch, you can see Malone playing my bass.
The Alien bass.
Yeah, it had. Did it have Alien stickers at that point? I had it covered in band stickers at one point, and then got rid of all the band stickers and put Alien stickers on instead. So if it had Alien stickers, then it was that era.
Well, sometimes you need an Alien sticker.
So, but once again, another random story that kind of ties us together because I joined the band years later. So anyway, going back to the early days of Billy Club, you guys started playing a bunch of shows.
Yep. That was with Rod on guitar.
Right. And then Rod left.
Well, if we backtrack just a minute, like, yeah, we started like 30 years ago, and there was a time where we had started, and then Kosis left, Glenn joined, and we kind of like gained some headway, and then Rod left. Rod left and came back, and then Rod left again.
Okay.
So was Rod leaving because y'all weren't getting along, or was Rod leaving just because he had other shit that he wanted to do?
No, so Rod is originally from Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
And so Rod is super, super, super ambitious man, and he always had something going on. So the first time he left, he moved back out to Cleveland. Actually played in a death metal band in Cleveland for a while called Decrepit.
Okay.
And it was funny because they were like a full-blown death metal band, and like the bassist was like a hood dude because he played bass. He played bass in Decrepit. But yeah, he just had other stuff going on. There wasn't any rift between us at all. And then he came back, and that's when we started up again, and that's when we were on the boardwalk and we met Martin. So that was like why there's like a gap there. Rod had moved back to Cleveland and done some stuff, and then he moved back to New York, and we started Billy Club again, and that's where we met Martin. So and then so we started playing shows and whatnot, and then Rod decided that he wanted to pursue like a career. So he left Billy Club again, and at that time we didn't have a guitar player, and that's when I went from playing bass to playing guitar. I'm not really a great guitar player or bass player, but I don't know. I think I'm a better guitar player than I am bass player. So I switched to guitar, and that we were looking for a bass player, and that's when we brought into the fold Matt Stevens, who was the bass player in a thrash band from our town called Cremation, and we had known him since high school, and he was able-bodied enough to play bass, and he was like, he would go sick, like he would dance at shows a lot, and he was kind of like this fearless metalhead, as tiny as he is, and like he kind of fit the band, so like we brought him into the fold, and he kind of just jumped right in on bass, and that's when we started to like write more songs. We started to write, our style was progressing more into like what Billy Club is today.
Right.
And
I mean, because y'all have a lot of different influences, but you still stay in your lane. Like, if Billy Club sounds like Billy Club, there isn't even really another band that I could say sounds like y'all, at least in my opinion. I mean, I really appreciate that. I think that that's what happens when you get people. I think when you get people from in and around New York City, and they're from vastly different backgrounds and vastly different ethnic groups, it can that's the only way that it can be, right? Like, right. I don't. I think from the beginning we just wanted to make music that we wanted to hear, growing up, I had a lot of anger issues growing up.
only growing up.
Only growing up.
Yeah.
I'll let you know when I'm grown up. But anyway, hardcore for me, I mean, it's cliche or whatever, but it was definitely a release for me, and I wanted to maybe be able to give kids what I had, but in my style,
right?
In our style. So yeah, I mean.
Well, I think part of it too, and we'll get into it more as we get into me joining the band also, is that we have a lot of different influences in a lot of different directions. So that mix really makes that music stand out a little more, because it's just it's a mix of vastly different types of music from one member to the next. We all listen to such different stuff that when you put us together in a room and we get creative, it manifests itself in many different directions, because, you know, Martin might be listening to Spanish music and Glenn is listening to reggae and I'm listening to like Lamb of God or something, and Malone's listening to, you know, some underground hip hop shit.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, because I've had actually people question that, Len, like it's a bad thing, like, or mention.
Wait, question what, that you guys have your own thing, or question...
Yeah, but like maybe particulars. Like I've had people say like, oh man, like fucking, you know, Muttley's like way into Maiden and King Diamond, huh? You know, and like in my mind,
are you talking about people within the band?
Well,
like fuck, you're listening to King Diamond again?
But like, you know, I don't know, like, I can't imagine like how fucking boring would our band be if we all only like the same music.
Well, all right, so I'm gonna have a hot take right minute.
Yeah, sure.
Right this minute. 90% of the bands that are coming out right now are all filled with kids that only listen to one thing, and that's why all their bands sound the same. Like, it's hard for me to tell the fucking difference between most of the bands that come out, because they're all reading the same damn playbook. Nobody is bringing in outside influences, and it's super fucking boring.
It's true. Because, and it's not even just for younger bands either. There's older bands that are like that too.
I mean, I think that's part of the reason why when Descent was going, and that people had a hard time like latching on to us, is because we were doing a number of different things while still doing some of what everybody else was doing. So people would feel like certain parts, but then we'd fuck them up with some other shit that we were doing that nobody else was doing.
Yeah, but I love Descent, bro.
It was a good time. But, you know, it was hit or miss when we would play live. Like, people would either stare at us or be super into it. And most of the people staring were the younger kids, like, what the fuck are these old dudes doing? Because, you know, we weren't just following a playbook. We were just doing what we wanted. We were playing the way we wanted to play.
Yeah.
Yeah, we stopped caring about that. We just do what we do. And I always look at other bands that were kind of the same way. Faith No More always had that tension within the band, but that's why they spit out so much good shit. Because Faith No More, if you've ever read interviews with them talking about the dynamic within the band, there was always this crazy push-pull in all these different directions, especially when Jim Martin was in the band. Jim was pulling it in more of a metal direction, and other members of the band were pulling in other directions. But that's how you ended up with a record like Angel Dust. Well,
that's how you end up with a band like Deftones as well. That everybody has a little bit of something pulling in each direction.
And they have that same thing because Carpenter, the guitar player, he's gone on record a few times talking about a few of their records, and he's like, yeah, I'm not crazy about it because when we got together, I just couldn't feel the vibe of where everybody else was going.
Yep.
But it all ended up coming together and working out a certain way, and a lot of people like it. Not everything is, you're talking about putting stuff in a blender, and some of the stuff is going to get a little messy sometimes. You know, we've never been at that point. Songwriting, we're like fighting with each other, but there are some bands that are like that, and when you put a lot of different stuff together and mix it, that's what happens.
Let me ask you that. But at any point in the band's history, did you guys ever almost come to blows over songwriting? Like, you're in the room and like you just deep argument about nonsense around a song, and then you end up just scrapping the song or whatever. Has it ever gotten to the point where it was like everybody was heated?
I don't think so. Not that I can think of.
Listen, when you got 4 gorillas in a room.
That's true too.
But like, no, I'm being serious. Like, if we start fist fighting, shit's fucked up. You know,
right.
Like, you know, a couple of $1,000 instruments are getting fucked up, and like, you know, I mean, we all have had our bouts with anger and shit like that, and we've gotten into heated discussions, but we've never come to blows. And I mean, we have scrapped songs because we couldn't get on the same page. I think every band has done that, right? But never to the point where, I mean, for a long time, Len, you know, all we had was us, you know? So right. You know, I don't think that, you know, I think that, and something that we'll get into a little bit later when we go into the rest of the story, but I think that like the brotherhood bond of Billy Club is a lot stronger, and has been strong from the beginning because we were outcasted for a long time. And, you know, like you say that, you know, you guys were playing in Descent and like, you know, some people were feeling it and other times people were just looking at me. I mean, that would happen to us, you know, I mean, it happened to us for a long time. I mean, we're very fortunate today that the kids of today that are into hardcore do their fucking homework. The internet is a terrible, terrible thing, but in a lot of ways it's great. Right. So like, yeah, I think the other day I said, like, you know, it only took 20 years for the information superhighway to become the misinformation superhighway. But within that superhighway, I mean, kids find out a lot about a lot of stuff, and we're very fortunate because we, you know, today have a larger and stronger fan base than we ever had. But, you know, for a long time, it was us. So we stuck tight, you know, and until some other things happen.
Yeah, we'll get there.
We'll get there.
I talked about that when we had Tom on, and we're talking about hardcore in general and how now a lot of kids do their homework, and there's some bands that never they didn't get their due the same way, and now everybody talks about them a certain way. I know I mentioned I think when we were talking to Tom that there were kids when we started playing again, and we'll get into that history again. But when we started playing again, we had kids that were coming up and like, yo, I wasn't old enough to see you back then, but now I'm so happy that I was able to see you. And it's a crazy dynamic. It's just, we have that kind of legacy that people did their homework and learned about us and learned our music. And when we started playing again, kids were out and about and all about it. And that was a really cool thing to experience.
You know, when you guys played that fest in Florida and I saw all the kids going off for you, because I was like, I don't know how it's going to go over going all the way down to Florida. I mean, I know you guys got like the special invite to get down there and come and play and all, but I was like, are kids these days into Billy Club? And then the whole club popped off, and Chris Striegel, or Straight Edge Chris, whatever you want to call him, posting videos while you're playing on the internet like, yo, the crowd is going fucking wild for Billy Club. And I was like, all right, I feel good about this now. I'm happy that you guys went, and like I was happy that it went off for you, because kids these days are fickle.
They are fickle with a lot of stuff, but it seems like when it comes to the older stuff, and I don't know if some people think that that's a trendy thing or whatever, a lot of kids were doing their homework and learning the songs or knew the songs and were coming out and singing along and doing their thing.
And I think that because of who we are as people, i.e. our ethnicity, etc., you know, there's a, you know, like, I think that kids want to see people that are like them, right?
Yeah,
so like
right.
You want to see people who, you know, like, and like, I'm sure a lot of those kids are like, oh man, like, you know, like Martin could be, you know, could fucking be my Tio, you know, like it could be my uncle, you know, like, and like, it's just something that you can relate to. And I think that, like, you know, hardcore, New York hardcore in particular has always been very diverse, right? Like, but just as years go on and decades pass, we're becoming more diverse in a scene. And, you know, like, I think kids identify, like, you know, there's, you know, kids want to see people who are like them, you know, and I think that also plays a large part too, you know, like, you know, and then there's, there's a whole lot of things that actually feed into that. There's the lore of Castle Heights, right? There's who we are as people. There's our sound. Like you said, it's distinct. If you hear it, you're not going to be like, oh, who is that?
I mean, let me just point something out.
Well, you might be like, who is that? But you're also saying, who is that? I want to know who it is.
Right.
Right.
But also when it comes to ethnicity, just looking at the band itself, the four of us, there's a whole bunch of different ethnicities represented within the band.
Mm-hmm.
Because my parents were born in Puerto Rico. Martin is Dominican. Glenn's parents are black and Irish, I think. And Malone is Irish, Italian, and Filipino.
Yeah.
So just look at the mix just within the four of us.
Got a lot going on.
Yeah. And then you add that some of the lyrics are in Spanish, which is something that I know was always something they wanted to do, but it also had the added effect of when we go to Puerto Rico, these kids are feeling it because it's like they're speaking our language. You know what I mean? And
right.
That was something. The first time we went to Puerto Rico, we picked up on that right away, and we were like, holy shit, because they were all about, and we talked about it with Phil. The first time we went to Puerto Rico, it was Sworn Enemy, Irate, EGH, Billy Club. But who had the biggest sing-alongs out of everybody? We did, because a lot of it was in Spanish. We were speaking their language, and they were all over.
They relate.
Yeah, they were all over it. And it wasn't, it was never a gimmick. It was never meant to be a gimmick, but it was just a product of being New York people and them wanting to do that. And now that's something that has caught on a bit. So it feeds into all of that we're talking about. But let's get back on track a little bit with the history, and then we can go from there. Matt Stevens joins the band. Band continues to play.
Yeah. So we, at that point, we started, writing more songs, writing a little bit differently, not maybe differently, but progressing, right? And we started writing for the Superheroes at Leisure EP. I think that time period was good. We gained a lot of popularity during then. We started playing Castle Heights, which, like I had mentioned before, the lore of Castle Heights. I mean, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of bands that came out of there that people, the kids that did their homework, they learned about EGH, they learned about Billy Club, they learned about Irate, they learned about Sworn Enemy, and they kind of identified us with that era. So that era was like, the Superheroes at Leisure era, Castle Heights.
That was the glory days of Castle Heights, because those bands that we talked about, the Five Fingers of Death, which was the four that went to Puerto Rico, EGH, Irate, Sworn Enemy, Billy Club, and then Eye to Eye was part of that also. When people talk about Castle Heights, a lot of times what they focus on was those glory days of Castle Heights, which was that late 90s stretch there until the end of Castle Heights. And that was when those bands were really building, and that whole scene was building up. As somebody who wasn't, because I hadn't joined Billy Club yet, so I was friends with everybody in those bands. But as an outsider, you saw just how big that whole scene was blowing up, and how those bands were getting bigger and bigger in that time frame, because you had Irate with Burden of a Crumbling Society, EGH, Sworn Enemy had Negative Outlook, and then not Negative. Why am I spacing out? What was the record? What was the name of the record? The first record. Was it Negative Outlook?
Yeah, it's Negative Outlook.
Okay. I'm thinking of Negative Image, the No Redeeming thing. So you had all those bands really hitting their stride in that time frame, along with everyone else that was playing Castle Heights in that whole scene, because you had bands coming from other places. And that continued to the end of Castle Heights.
And I mean, big shout out to Kevin Castle. I mean,
yeah,
he had a lot to do with that, and just to have the opportunity to build a scene somewhere, back then, I mean, and to this day, but our crowd's a different type of crowd, right? So, like, just having a place where we could play and that we could call home, and to have somebody that was open-minded enough and not scared, really, and who actually, Kevin, fucking fan of our bands, dude. First and foremost, I think he loved our bands and was like, these guys need a place to play, and I have this rock club going where I book all kinds of different rock acts, but they need a niche too. And we got that opportunity, and it became like the relationships that I built with, Eye to Eye and Sworn Enemy and EGH and Irate there, and all the rest of the people in the bands I still have those relationships to this day. So, I mean, that place was important.
That place was home.
Yeah.
For us, from that spot in the late 90s, because before I joined Billy Club, I had played there with Distance, and then I started playing with 5 Minute Major, and 5 Minute Major played there a lot with those same bands. We played there with Billy Club. We played there with Sworn Enemy. And it was home. It was a regular scene. There were plenty of people, me included, that went there even when we weren't playing, to support our friends and also just to hang out, because we were friends with Kevin. We were friends with John the Doorman. We were friends with Frank, the owner. We would go there and just hang out. And I used to work there also. Glenn used to work there also, later on. And that place was just home for us. But that whole scene, also, Kevin would bring in bands from outside. He'd bring in a band from Pennsylvania. He'd bring in Punishment, or he'd bring in Shattered Realm, or he'd bring in bands from all over the place. Settled Score played there.
Redline
played there. Sworn Vengeance from California played there.
Mm-hmm.
Cold as Life played there. So there were bands in and out from all over, and everybody showed them love. So everybody wanted to come back. It was a good scene. So with that era with Matt Stevens, that was when Billy Club really started to hit a stride and grow as a band.
Yeah, I'd definitely say that's when we started to really build a name for ourselves and, and plant a flag. I mean, the lineup was solidified. We were writing, we were active, we were playing a lot of shows, we were releasing material. It was definitely a good time in the band's history as far as becoming who we were going to be.
So what exact years was that? Around, at least.
So that was the late 90s. So let's say 96.
Well, 96 was when the band played the first show.
Yeah, I was at the Wetlands. So I'll say 98 to 2002, maybe.
Okay.
Well, there's a transition in there that we'll get to.
Right.
Because things started to get a little rough with Matt.
And
because I didn't become aware of Billy Club until probably 99, 2000. But again, I was in New Jersey, and you guys hadn't hit New Jersey, so I didn't really learn about you guys until I got onto that website.
Well, and to be fair, you guys had your own thing going on with a lot of up-and-coming bands yourselves.
Yep.
And some of the bands were coming out, like Redline and Shattered Realm and stuff, but there was a whole other scene in Jersey that we didn't know about.
Mm-hmm.
And
because the internet wasn't what it is now. It's not like there was no YouTube. You couldn't go on YouTube and look at this band that you heard about.
Right.
That didn't exist yet.
So from 98 things were going good. We had built like a name for ourselves. We had released Superheroes. We did we did the live CD demo. Things started, there's a common strand throughout the history of Billy Club. And things started to get rough between us and Matt. The dedication to the band wasn't there. There was some substance abuse going on. And he became less reliable right when we were like starting to catch fire.
And this was after Superheroes was recorded, but before it was released.
Right. And it was hard. I'll tell you right now, being on the other side, because I would be on the other side later on, but being on the other side of it, it was very difficult. Especially, I had known Matt since I was 14 years old. And, to just deal with certain things that were going on and to see the deterioration and things like that, it fucked me up, and like me and Glenn and Martin are kind of sitting around like, what the fuck are we going to do? He's our friend. We care about him. We love him. But at the same time, this isn't working in this situation.
Right. There's only so much you can do.
Right.
He's got to help himself.
Which is another thing we'll get to later. But, so we had a pretty important show that we didn't want to get fucked up. And we had known Muttley the whole time. Matt couldn't do the show for whatever reason, and we didn't want to cancel.
Mm-hmm.
So we asked Muttley, can you fill in?
And the show happened to be on my birthday 20 years ago now. This was the year 2000.
Yep.
So they approached me about it, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. I'm down. So we did the show. We ended up playing Castle Heights at like 2 in the fucking morning or something. Something ridiculous, because there were a lot of bands on the show, and somehow I was still able to stand up because Frank, the owner, kept feeding me drinks all night because it was my birthday. And we played the show, and it was good, but we didn't really have much of a chance to practice before the show because Glenn had gone to Europe with no redeeming.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a chance to practice twice before the show. We practiced once, then he flew, and then I think we practiced like maybe the day or two before the show. Glenn's still jet lagged and shit, if I remember right. And when we played, much like what Malone said about chemistry, talking about Martin, when he went into the studio, we played and there was that spark.
It just all fell together?
Yeah. And we felt it. I had other things going on because I was playing in 5 Minute Major at the time, and the deal was we had put out a record with a French label, and the deal was that if we could write another record, they would bring us over to Europe on tour. And at that point, I had played in a bunch of bands, but I had never gone to Europe, and it was still like a pipe dream. It was still like a fantasy to me. Like, my God, we could actually go to Europe? So after I filled in that show, I was already friends with the Billy Club guys. I was talking to Glenn and Martin a lot, and this was back in the days when you had to call people. There was no Facebook. There was no texting even. This is before texting because we're old. But you want to talk to somebody, you gotta pick up the phone and talk to them, which is foreign nowadays. But that's how it was back then. So, I would talk to the guys every now and again, and it got to the point where it was just no good with Matt. And I had said to them, like, yeah, I don't know if I really want to do 2 bands because we got this offer to go to Europe if we write this record, blah, blah, blah. But then over time, things were not well within that band, within 5 Minute Major. Certain people weren't getting along. And I was kind of the middleman, which is never a good place to be.
Mm-hmm.
So finally I said, you know what? I started to really think about it. And then in talking to Glenn said to me, well, we've reached this point. We've made this decision. We're going to be looking for somebody. We'd like it to be you, but if not, we're going to be looking. And I thought about it. And I thought about how that chemistry was when we were in the studio. And I said, you know what? With the way the chemistry is in my current band, it's not really going. I finally reached the point where I decided we're never going to write this record. So what am I holding on to here? Like, I won't necessarily quit the band, but I'm not, maybe this isn't my best option. Because these dudes seem like they want to make moves. They've got a record already recorded.
Might as well just go on and do it.
Maybe that's the better option for me. So.
And now look at you, 20 years later.
Well, yeah.
Well, there was.
You're all grown up now.
There's some pit stops in between, but.
Yeah.
But,
hey.
I think that.
The pit stops are part of the journey.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
that's the point.
And to that end, I'll say I'm better friends with Muttley now than I ever have been in my entire life.
Yeah.
And we had to go through those things to get here. And because everything could be perfect, right? Like, the chemistry was there. Now, if you know anything about music, you know that our playing styles complement each other in a way that you don't always come across. Muttley and Glenn, me and Glenn, just the way that our styles actually work together. Like,
we don't want to. I mean, vocals are a whole different part of the mix. But when the three of us got together and just played, me playing a 5-string bass, Malone playing the way he plays, certain chord shapes and stuff like that, and Glenn playing the caveman style that he plays, it all fit together a certain way.
And I think the important part of that statement is that we didn't have to change our styles to play together to have us sound, to have it be that way.
There was only one thing that had to change, and it was my doing, because I decided that I was still going to play in 5-minute major, and I told these guys, listen, I'll join the band, but you got to tune down to D, because they were in E flat, which I don't get E flat anyway. Like, just go down. But when I joined the band, I was like, okay, you guys are in E flat. You got to go down to D because my other band's in D.
So what you're saying, like E flat is like a hand job, right? It's like, I don't get it. Just go down.
Yeah, I don't get it. You guys did it. Sworn Enemy did it.
Just
I'm
put
like,
your mouth
what the fuck
on
is
it.
this E flat shit? Stop fucking fence walking and just make the move all the way down.
Honestly, Billy Club sounds better in D anyway.
Well, it's definitely better than being tuned to Rod.
Like, so was it that Rod just didn't know how to tune and he just tuned to whatever he was in at the moment?
No, I think that it was just a large part of it had to do with us being young and inexperienced. Like, I remember when we started to record, when we started to record Superheroes, my guitar was all fucked up. Like, I didn't know anything about doing a setup, or getting a setup done. So I actually recorded the Superheroes at Leisure album with AJ Novello's Les Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And like, he was like, yo, you got to tune after every song. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is still in tune. And he was like, dog, you're recording. You got to tune after every, I didn't.
Take.
Yeah, every take you got to retune, And I mean, I'm, retuning in between half takes and stuff. Like, I didn't know anything about any of that. I was a pothead who liked to hit people. No,
I'm going to tell you, we talked about it earlier. I was recording earlier. I definitely did not tune in between takes.
Right.
But my guitar stays in tune like a fucking motherfucker.
Well, I was just saying, you're using good equipment now.
Len. Rub it in, Len.
That's me rubbing that shit in.
But, back then, none of us were using very good equipment. And, it's a learning curve. Back then, nobody knew how to do any of that stuff.
Yeah, so
I was the same way. I was in, my early bands were like, yo, give me an E. And just tune to the other guy.
Right. And that's a lot of what was going on. We were just young and experienced, didn't know, I was concerned about how to get my palm muting to sound the best, not like what, it was misguided, but
I feel like kids these days don't understand the technique of palm muting and how you can change the texture of your palm mute by changing the position, just a quarter-inch change in your hand. Yep. Just slide it up, slide it back. Yeah, exactly. Like, it depends on, what chug are you going for? Are you trying to get that Fear Factory tight chug, or are you trying to get that fucking that Billy Club sandwich, like just full chug? Like there are layers to this game, and if you don't have, like, you were trying to get the best chug you could get, but in doing that, you learn how to make the guitar sing the way you want it to for the part so that it sounds the way it's supposed to.
And, like, for me, I have to play a standard bridge.
Yeah, I mean, I could get away with playing a floating, but I definitely sound better on a standard bridge.
Me too, and that's something I had to learn. Like, I had Floyd Roses to begin with, and now everything I play is a standard bridge, Like... And that, to me, is a different sound, and the other part of that, too, is that, I'm heavy-handed, so, like...
Same.
Them things can fly out of tune, and, like, I don't know, I need something with a standard bridge, but, yeah. I think that there was a lot of learning going on, that was the time we were supposed to. I don't look back at it negatively.
Well, everybody starts somewhere, and like I said, it was before YouTube. Like, now, you want to learn how to set up a guitar, you can go on YouTube and learn in 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. There was no YouTube. Everything was word of mouth when it came to instruments. It's like,
yep.
Do you know how to work on a guitar? No. Let me show you. Right. Unless you have somebody to guide you, which in some aspects, I kind of played that role when I joined Billy Club with certain things. But unless you have somebody to guide you, there's no how-to videos, there's no handbook. You just learn by absorbing from the people around you, the people that you work with.
Yeah, when I first learned how to set up a guitar, it was probably 2000, 2001, and I was just downloading directions off of a website where somebody had typed it in and made like a hand-drawn diagram of, like, oh, you want to change your truss rod because the strings are doing this? Turn it this way or turn it that way and it'll do that. There were no videos. There were no good pictures, because getting pictures on the internet was like, because it was all dial-up, so it was just like,
picture will take forever.
Come in, take a month for the picture to come in. But
and it'll still look like shit anyway.
Yeah. So, but you could get words, so I was just downloading words, and I used to have packets of shit printed out because I was working at a job where I had free reign access to a printer, and they weren't like checking what you printed. So I had tabs. I was learning all kinds of nonsense by like printing it out and then taking it home and spend the night alone, huddled over a piece of paper.
Yeah,
that was key back then.
Tabs,
now it's like nothing. Now high-speed connections, everything. You can get pictures, you can get videos, all kinds of stuff. Back then,
my phone is more up to the task than a computer I had in 2000. Like, I could do more on this
by
thing
far.
in my pocket.
Oh yeah,
dude. I'm at work and a piece of equipment that I've never worked on before in my life breaks down, and in 60 seconds I've got a tutorial on YouTube and I fix it and we're back up running.
Yeah.
You can't even compare, what's going on now. I mean,
all you gotta have is the call number, like the name of the machine.
Yep.
You type it in and it's like, all right, here's the 6 things that always go wrong with this fucking thing.
Yep.
Which one is it?
Yeah, exactly. And I remember MapQuest is for rich kids, bro. Remember? MapQuest is for rich kids. We gotta handwritten directions from the promoter.
And then in a regular old atlas.
Yeah. You know, like I remember, you know, like having just handwritten sheet of paper on how to get to the club, man. You know, like
when Breath of Silence went on tour, we went out all the way out to California and back. And I mean, literally, this is well before the time where there were. I mean, I had a cell phone, but it was like one of the Nokia flip phones with where you gotta push the letter 3 times. I mean, the number 3 times to find the right letter or whatever. Like there were no smartphones back in 2004,
no GPS on that
2005. So we're out on the road all over the place with handwritten directions from the promoter. Like called them on the phone. All right, do this, do this, do this, and this. And then we also had an atlas for like the major roads. So they're like, yeah, take this, this, and this. And then when you get to here, take this exit. And then this is what you do to get to the club.
Yep.
Kids these days don't know the struggle.
No.
Everything is too easy. Like all you do is type it in your phone, press a button, and then the whole thing just yells at you all night till you're where you got to be. It couldn't be easier.
No. Oh yeah. I've said many times, I don't understand how people, like the first time I went to Europe was 2004. And just thinking about how did they do this shit before that was, at least you had computers and email. You didn't really have smartphones, but how did they do it before computers?
Well, I think that the way that worked was that your driver couldn't be someone who you just asked to drive.
Yeah.
The drivers knew the clubs. They had done the tours before. They had learned the routes. They knew where certain places were in certain cities. That's why, like, if you listen to Franco tell the stories of, like, the Warzone tours and shit, like, the guy who was driving for Warzone was, like, you know, this older dude who drove for, like, you know.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, he drove for Thin Lizzy, you know.
But even those early days, like, how did they even book those tours? It was just like, it must have just been tons of long distance phone calls.
Yeah.
You know, there was no internet, no instant messenger, no Facebook, no nothing. Like everything was just hard way.
And phone calls. Letters and phone calls, that's all.
Yeah, which is crazy. So back to Billy Club. I joined the band. That was the beginning of 2001. My first show was actually at Wetlands. It was supposed to be the record release for Superheroes at Leisure, but then we didn't get the discs. And to tie in with what we were just talking about, here's a weird one for you. When I joined Billy Club, I was the only member of the band that owned a computer, which is weird. You think about it now, everybody's got a computer, everybody's got a laptop and a smartphone and this and that. I was the only one that owned a computer, so immediately one of the first things I did, because Chris B from EGH was running the Billy Club website, so I took that over from him, and we started doing things. Like I mentioned before, there were a few things, like the computer thing, because that was as social media was just beginning, but you had message boards like the East Coast Hardcore message board and things like that, which were a big way of getting out there and making contacts. So that was one of the first big roles that I played in Billy Club, reaching out to different people and making connections, and that eventually set the stage for the trips that we would go on in the future. But also having learned some of the other stuff when it came to music equipment and stuff like that, kind of sharing all that, I finally got Malone to use a noise suppressor pedal, which took a little while because he was originally dead set against it. I don't need that shit.
If you got to use that shit.
Oh yeah,
you got to use it.
No, because once he finally started using it, he's like, "Yo, why didn't I use this shit before?"
Like I can't even. There are only a couple things when it comes to playing live that I absolutely have to have, but that is one of them.
Oh yeah. Well, I had a stomp box, so I would hit the clean channel, which the volume was turned down on for the breaks. But that was a pain in the balls, bro.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you could walk away from the noise gate.
Yeah, exactly. And then how many times would Martin fucking stomp on my stomp box in the middle of a song? You know.
At least if he stomps on the noise gate, it just leaves it open.
Right. So.
Yeah. So that was one of the things that happened, and eventually Superheroes came out, and we started. We continued, and like we were talking about before with Castle Heights, Billy Club was already upward momentum, and then when I joined, I just tried to keep that momentum going, and the internet was becoming a bigger thing, so that was part of my role in the band, and we started getting together and writing songs and playing shows, and it was a different dynamic because they had issues with Matt for a while, and in their own evaluation, it was affecting their performance. So once I joined, they were like, yo, if anything's out of whack, let us know so that we can tighten this shit up.
Right.
And that's what we did.
And I mean, we approached it as a unit unlike we had ever before, though.
Well, we were also, as I mentioned before, we were already friends for years at that point. Because that first show where I met Malone was 96. So you're talking about, I've been friends with Glenn and Martin pushing 10 years. And I was friends with Malone for 5 years. So it wasn't like some stranger joining the band. We were already tight. We had already hung out many, many times and at shows and outside of shows and just doing different things. So we already had that friendship down. So the chemistry without the instruments was already there.
Which is just important all by itself.
Very. And it comes into play later on down the road as well.
And that was kind of alluding to that earlier when I said, like, everything could be perfect, right? Like, we complement each other's sounds, our styles work well together, but like if we personality-wise aren't on the same page, that's an issue.
Absolutely.
That's as much as
we're
an
not
issue.
at that level where we can have separate buses and shit and separate dressing rooms. You know what I mean?
And just come together for that hour or whatever.
Dressing room number 1 as far away as possible from dressing rooms 2, 3, and 4.
So, and then we were just in the studio. Like I lived in Mount Vernon. The studio was in Mount Vernon. We all kind of just, Muttley was what? You were 15 minutes away from the studio, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. I was in the Bronx, so I wasn't far at all.
And we shared
in the early days, you were living in Mamaroneck. I was working in Mamaroneck.
Yep.
So I would go hang out with him, and then we'd go to the studio.
And then, like, we were
sharing. Or we'd go hang out at Mike's house.
Yeah. We were sharing a room with Irate. We shared a room with Irate for what, almost 10 years, maybe?
Yeah, you guys had that room before I joined the band.
So we had this room in Mount Vernon. Irate and Billy Club shared the room, which made for even better. It was even better because it was a place where we could all meet. I mean, like I used to go down there when Irate was practicing and fucking blow blunts and hang out, and they used to do the same when we were practicing. And then there was a lot of times where we would all be in the room together and start jamming and just do these like wild Candiria style jams where we'd all be kind of just playing some simple riff together, and then Nando would solo, Glenn and UV were playing drums, and then like there would be a break and I would play a different riff, and then everybody would follow, and like we were just like
having a good time together.
Yeah, and like we were all real close, and like that room in particular, and that time when Muttley joined the band, like I just felt like that was the lineup that we were supposed to have. Because everything fit, the personality wise, the band wise. Muttley brought a lot more knowledge to the group as far as helping me out with my instrument and different things. And it was just a whole kind of new vibe. And then, you know, we started practicing and playing shows and writing. And that was kind of even more of a progression for Billy Club, you know.
And we started getting invited to more places. We started traveling a little more. And that Puerto Rico trip in 2004 was the first time that we had seriously traveled. We might do a show here or there or do a weekend or something, but that was the first time we all got together on an airplane and traveled. And then later that year, we got to go to Europe, and we did 2 weeks in Europe, and that was a mind blower because, like I said before, Europe was always that thing floating out there, like that fantasy. Like, I never thought that I would actually be able to go to Europe and play. And we did it, you know?
I'm going to backtrack just a bit.
Yeah.
Everything's going good. I had a seriously injured shoulder. And this is kind of an important part of the story. This is a little bit of...
How did you injure your shoulder?
Okay, so I injured my shoulder originally in 1991.
Okay.
At a show. It was Heads Up and Funk Face, which I don't know if you're familiar, but it was like funkcore kind of stuff. But they were hard, but they were funky. And I was in the pit, and I got landed on, and I dislocated my shoulder, and I never did anything about it. And then I continued to dance unapologetically, maybe is the word I should use.
That's one way to put it.
And anybody who's ever seen me, I've retired a long time ago. I don't dance anymore, but I retired a long time ago. But like, I wasn't a very nice person, and I didn't really give a shit about my body. And so I had this thing injured for almost 10 years by that time. Okay. Now, in 2000, I first took a Vicodin for my shoulder in 2000. And then I would take them from time to time. And a very crazy thing happened in my life in 2001 where my father passed away. But my father passed away very unexpectedly, and took his last breath like in my arms. And I was never... I had probably lived with mental illness for a while. As far back as I could remember, I had a problem, an anger issue, and I don't know what it was about. I've been through countless hours of therapy since then. And I can't pinpoint what it was, but I think some people are just born, with a predilection for a certain type of emotion, right? And for me, that was it. And I had been in trouble for fighting and, fighting, but like attacking classmates since I was a kid, and I mean, it's laughable to say it, but when you think back and like you're in first and second grade and they're moving your desk into the principal's office, and you're taking your assignments there because you can't be with other children, that's fucked up, And and as I look back, like, I was fucked up from a young age. And so I had all of these things going on, and that happened. And I have to say that was like a turning point in my life, and not for the better.
Right.
And that was a catalyst for things later on.
Yeah, my father passed away on October 27th of 2001. We had just lived through 9/11. I could walk out of my house to the train bridge and look down the train bridge and just see smoke billowing out. And then my father passed away. And then on November 23rd of that same year, which was the day after Thanksgiving, my uncle passed away. My mental health suffered greatly. And at that time is when I first started to really start to fuck around with other drugs. I had been a pothead since I was maybe 15 or 16 years old. I had been drinking pretty much since 6th grade. And I didn't know any other coping mechanism for anything. So at that time, things started to change for me, and not only like my outlook on life, but the drugs I was taking. And it was really like the beginning of my crash course. So at the same time, you know, the band was doing really well. And I think the important thing to maybe kind of, because we're going to get to some things that happened between myself and the band, but these things really started to happen way before, you know, the end result. And so, you know, I think that the important thing to say about addiction is that it's progressive. Okay, so you don't wake up one morning and you're like, oh shit, like I'm a drug addict. You wake up one morning and you have the realization that you're a drug addict, but that has been occurring for a long period of time. And I was a functional addict for a long time.
Well, I mean, that means the whole time I have, like, when I first met you, you were already there.
Well, let me step in with this.
We're really jumping into it.
Correct.
Let me step in with this. We're looking at this timeline here, and you're talking about 2001. That's the year I joined the band. So except for maybe the first 6 months I was in the band, this situation has been going on the entire time that I was in the band. And it didn't really start to manifest itself until, I would say, probably 2008. So you're talking about a good 7 years of us out there doing our thing. You could say we're grinding, but it wasn't like we were going and doing U.S. tours for a month or anything like that. A lot of it was weekend stuff and occasional trips. We went to Europe. We went to Puerto Rico and Europe in 2004, and we went to Puerto Rico and Europe again in 2008. We went to Florida in 2005 and played a bunch of shows on a long weekend. And then that was really it. Everything was fine. All right, so this was going on practically the entire time that I'm in the band. It didn't show up until 2007. Or 2007 or 2008, I would say.
I would say it's probably 2008.
We went to Puerto Rico and Europe in 2004. We went to Florida in 2005. Did 4 shows on a long weekend. We traveled different places here and there, up and down East Coast, up to Maine, out to Pennsylvania. 2008, we did Puerto Rico again, and then we did Europe again. And that's the first time that I really remember having issues in Europe, because I know there were a few points where there was definitely some talk and some side meetings and stuff like that. And things were starting to get a little hairy. And it got to the point where a couple of us had to kind of corner Malone and be like, yo, you need to chill the fuck out.
I mean, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that was in Amsterdam. So if you're getting stressed out in Amsterdam, you know, some shit's going on.
So let me ask you this. Yeah. You're saying that you're in Amsterdam and things are going sideways and you guys got to pull Malone aside. Like, what And I don't need dirty details, but what was wrong that you noticed that you felt like you had to just say something?
It was attitude.
Okay.
And it was Martin and I kind of had a little sidebar and was like, yo, is this dude pissing you off? Because he's pissing me off. And we were like, yeah. And then we had to kind of approach him and just be like, yo, you got to chill the fuck out.
Now, Malone, do you remember this conversation?
Yeah. Okay. I remember the conversation. Do
you remember how you felt when they came at you with this conversation?
Well, I'll say this. I'm a crazy motherfucker, Len.
You're not telling me anything new.
Right. And I kind of, like, in hindsight, I feel bad because I'm really hard-headed and you can't tell me shit. And it's even 10 times worse when I'm active in addiction. Right. Okay? So for them to have to come to me and check me, you know, I mean, I've had people tell me like, yo, dude, like, you're not an easy dude to approach about some shit like this. Like, you're fucking angry and defensive and hard-headed just in normal everyday life. So, you know, when it comes to, you know, checking you on some shit, you know, I was like defensive. You know, I mean, I think at that time I had not come to the realization of who I was yet in addiction.
Well, we approached it and we weren't happy with being in that position, but we felt like we had to say something. Now, for us, addiction's not even on the radar here.
Right.
We have no idea.
You guys didn't even know that was the issue.
That's the first sign of an issue, period. And okay. I'm talking about just personality-wise.
So how did you pull this off?
It didn't cross our minds at all that addiction is even part of this scenario here.
So, Malone, how did you pull off basically a 7-year spiral with your, what I would argue, best friends around you enough to be a productive band? Because I know what it is to be in a productive band, and I know what it's like to have people around that aren't on board. A person that is spiraling into a full-blown addiction had to have shown signs before that, but somehow they didn't notice, or you were really good at covering it up.
I didn't cover it up, though. That was kind of the deal. Was like I was out there, a fucking pill addict. Like they would see me taking pills.
Right, but they didn't. You didn't realize it was as bad as it was, Muttley?
No, definitely not. Because in all fairness, we're older dudes on tour playing like every night. So all of us were popping a pill here and there. Mm-hmm. Maybe not all of us, but I would say more than one of us. But it wasn't like we're like fisting Vicodins.
Yeah, like they weren't like me.
One a night. So it's like to see a pill wasn't that big a deal, but you know, nobody saw this dude taking a fucking fistful of Vicodins.
Right.
And it was more about personality conflicts. And right. Yeah, we had, because let's face it, all of us to one level or another, the four of us are a bunch of hard-headed motherfuckers at times. So sure, we may have butted heads here and there on little shit, but that was the first time that it felt like it was a little bit different because we had been on tour before. We had traveled and we've been good. We're all, you know, we travel and we're in the same vehicle and we're chilling. Like, yeah, we may bust each other's balls and maybe we'll get annoyed a little more with Martin or something because he drinks too much or something, but it's not like it was a real... Like, we never considered it to be anything that was a real problem.
Right.
That was the first time that something kind of showed up on the radar. That was the first time that we really had a significant conflict, I would say.
And I think that conflict arose out of me, you know, like Charlie Murphy said, I was like a habitual line stepper. No, but I mean,
no, I believe it.
It's accurate,
right? And I think part of like what you had asked earlier, Len, when you were like, "How did I hide this?" or "How did I do?" And I think the best answer that I could give about that is that it starts to manifest itself in other ways first. The way you treat people is probably the first thing that changes.
Right.
Is the way that you treat the people who are around you. And that is, of all the things that I've done and I've done to myself, my biggest regret in all of this has to do with the way I treated the people that I love. It's progressive. So it got worse. Like, it didn't end there.
No, definitely not.
Now, some important things happened in that time frame in 2008, because that happened on tour, and then I also was involved in a really bad breakup, and that spiraled me even more. So if it took 7 years to get to this point, or 8 years or whatever, it took less than, I would say, 2 years from that point to...
Yeah, it was a very quick decline from there. One of the things that I could say is there was that incident on tour, and looking back, there were maybe little things that if I really... Like, they were so isolated and smaller that in hindsight, yeah, you could see the path, but if you're in the middle of it, like, it's not anything that's big enough to really raise red flags. Little communication issues here and there. After that, things started to get worse, and well, I'll let you finish what you were saying as far as what was going on in your life, and then we'll put it in perspective with what was going on in the band.
So at that point, I went through a really bad breakup, and it was basically a full-blown breakdown. I had a full-blown mental breakdown. And again, my only coping mechanism that I know of is, to try to fill the void with drugs. At that point, I switched drugs. I was taking Percocet or Vicodin and Xanax, and then I started to take straight Oxycontin, oxycodone, Opana. So I graduated maybe from 10 milligram Percocets to 80 milligram pure Oxycontin.
Which is just
way
over the
way. Yeah, I mean, that's what they give terminal cancer patients, and my method of abuse changed as well. So I went from popping pills to snorting pills.
Right. Which gets into your bloodstream faster.
Gets into your bloodstream faster. You also become addicted to the ritual. And I don't know, this is something that you often hear heroin addicts talk about, like fixing up, getting their needle ready, etc. The same kind of deal when you're crushing up pills, etc. I was all alone at home. I was depressed. I had a breakdown, and I was a full-blown drug addict at that point. I graduated to a new set of opioids, and my method of abuse changed. And my decline was rapid. That's when the lying took off, the stealing took off, the doing anything to get high took off, and my entire life changed as I know it. I was no longer a functional addict. I was a full-blown opiate addict. And
well, let me interrupt you for a second just to give you the perspective. The band didn't know any of this, because one of the things that happened just by circumstance was that we no longer had the practice room. So we were just going to hourly spots. There was a spot in the Bronx that we would go to and practice. And then eventually I had a monthly room that we shared. It was us and Mickey's crew and another band. And I was working in a different place. Malone was living in a different place. So it wasn't like it was in the early days when I would just go. I was working near him and go to his house and hang out. We didn't hang out as much.
Right.
Which was just circumstances. It wasn't a conscious thing. It wasn't like I don't want to hang out with this dude. It was just we were in different places and we weren't hanging out as much. We weren't practicing as much because when we had the monthly room, we would go there a couple of times a week. So part of why we weren't aware of it was because we weren't spending as much time with each other, which was just, like I said, circumstance, but it really factors into this because you think, well, how did you guys not know? And it's because the dynamic was different. We weren't hanging out like we used to. And I also, by that point, I had kids, so I wasn't hanging out as much because I had to watch the kids because my kids were really young. So it was just a combination of all of these different circumstances that plays into this. And we would play shows here and there, but the dynamic started to change between us as people, and being that I was doing a lot of the booking and a lot of the business for the band, it put me in a lot more conflict with him because I need to book a show and I need an answer on whether you can play this show or not, and the dude's not answering his phone and not answering emails and not. It's like I can't book shit.
Right.
And that was when the dynamic changed. And it changed in the rest of the band simply because then when he wasn't around, we would have arguments about shit. And I'd be like, well, how are we going to approach this? And the other dudes are like, yo, I'm getting sick and tired of you guys fighting all the fucking time. And for me, I was getting more and more frustrated because I had other things in my life, like I said, my kids, that were pulling me in different directions. But here I am, I put the kids to bed, and then I'm up until 2 a.m. answering emails and like talking to people trying to book shows and stuff. And then I go to sleep, and then I got to wake up. Kids wake up at 5 a.m. or something. I got to do something with the kids, and then I got to go to my day job. So here I am putting all these late night hours in to try and book shows that we end up not being able to book because this dude won't give me an answer, and I'm pulling my hair out.
Right.
And then when I talk to him, he's like, yo, because I straight up said to him at a few points, I was like, yo, something's going on with you. You ain't right. Because we would just end up arguing about shit. And then he would turn around and say, yo, it's not me, it's you.
Of course it's not him.
Right.
Well, so we're talking about you like you're not even here. Of course it's not Malone. It's everybody else. That was the dynamic. It became all this tension mainly between me and him because of the business aspect of things. So it put us at odds, and it started to eat away at our relationship in and outside of the band because I just was getting fed up. And I also felt like something was definitely wrong with this dude. And I was approaching him as a friend trying to say, yo, what's going on? You're not right. Like, something's wrong with you. Let me help you. Right.
And just getting the brick wall.
And at that moment, you didn't want the help.
Well, the thing about addiction is that, so there's a couple of things at work, right? It's like, it's my only way that I know how to not feel the pain. So I don't, it's like a security blanket. So I don't want to lose it. Mm-hmm. In the same token, these guys are saying to me like, oh, yo, like, you got a problem. Like, you got to face this. Like, what's going on with you? There's something going on. And part of it is like, you don't want to face your friends, right? Because, like, I think anybody that knows me will tell you that, like, like, if you're my friend, I love harder for you than anybody, right? And that's truly who I am as a person. So I don't want to face you and admit I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. But the other part of that too is that I didn't want to face myself.
Right.
Having to see that and see what you've become is just horrendous. Now, you can't. It's a program of attraction, okay? Because you can't make somebody get clean, man. I can't get clean for you.
No, it's got to be for you.
I can't, people can't get clean for their kids. It just doesn't work that way. I wish it did, Len.
Mm-hmm.
I wish it did, because that would change a lot of the things about addiction and the stigmas about addiction. Because, and I'm sure that Muttley could tell you, it does. When you're looking at it from the other side, it seems like I don't give a fuck about them or how they feel or any of that. And to a certain extent, it's true when you're getting led around by the nose by a drug.
Right.
I could just say that at that time in my life, when those guys were approaching me, and they knew, and they weren't the only ones. Rob from EGH pulled me aside on many of occasions, like, "Yo, what's up? You got to slow down on those Tic Tacs. You're nodding out at the table," or like other people, and the mask starts to slip,
Right.
And it becomes harder and harder and harder. And, the emotions you go through in a time like that only made me, I don't want to speak for other people, but they only made me want to use more. I just wanted it to be over. And I didn't think that I would be able to make it be over and stay alive.
Right.
So,
things are starting to change. Like, the gig is up, right?
By the way, like I said, through all of this, we never really knew exactly what the problem was. We didn't know if it was drugs or if it was just other stuff. Like, we really weren't sure what the issue was. I wasn't sure what the issue was. We started, like, at the tail end of it, we started to kind of wonder
together.
and piece little bits together. But even then, we didn't really realize the extent of what was going on. But I'm also not somebody that really has had much experience with that. Like, I never had a family member that was an addict. I never had other friends that were addicts that I had to help. So it was all new to me. It was all uncharted territory for me. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't even know for sure that that's what it was. I just knew that my friend ain't acting right.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also affecting us from the business perspective also, because by that point, we were doing well with the band and we were doing a lot of things and we had offers to go and do different things, different places. And it was something that we did for fun, but I did spend a lot of my time doing it. And
I mean, yeah. And, I looked at it, like, the only way that I could, probably explain it is like, I wanted to be there. I wanted to be, but there was just no way. When something gets a hold of you in that manner, I mean, you hear all the stories, right? Somebody's got everything going for them, fucking overdoses and dies. Everybody sits back and says, "Can you imagine that? He had everything going for him." And all I can tell you is that it when it gets a hold of you, I mean, it's the devil. I can't explain it any other way, because my feelings and my emotions wanted to be the person who I knew I was. I wanted to be the friend that I knew I was and the bandmate that I knew I was, and I wanted to be accountable. But my actions were completely different. And, it was going to take a long time, and I had to go through a lot of things before I could become that person again.
I mean, not to sidetrack your story, but so we all met because I was playing in Breath of Silence.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, weird shit was happening in our band, and I didn't really understand it. And then our band broke up, and we reformed a new band called Die Hard, and it had a lot of the same members in it, but the problems persisted. And then all of a sudden, Jay, our old drummer, decides he's moving to California. he ended up having a kid with some girl out there. They broke up, but like, and I went out and visited him, but he was always weird, and everything was always like funny money, and like things came up, shit was going sideways, and there was never a really good explanation for it. I got a phone call one day, and then he's like, yo, I need $200. My parents are going to lose the house. And it felt weird, but I was like, he's my boy. I'm going to help him out. Cause like, I'm not recognizing the signs. Just like Gary, you weren't recognizing the signs. Like sometimes that shit just passes by because you're not with your friends 24/7 watching their every move. And most people who have addiction also have the ability to cover their own ass until it's completely out of control.
Yeah.
So fast forward another few years, and I get a phone call from Jay's brother that he overdosed in the bathroom and he was gone. And, you know, he had a kid, a new girlfriend. They were planning to buy a new house and a new, like he was a registered nurse because he had gone through school. And his problem was that he was too close to a pill source. So you watch those movies where people are siphoning pills from their people, and then he ran out of pills, and then he's doing heroin off the street. And, you know, his parents found him in the bathroom while they were visiting him on vacation with a needle stuck in his arm. And it's just like, I totally understand what you mean about sometimes you can't. The devil gets a hold of you, and you just sometimes you can't fight it off. So, you know, I hate to sidetrack your story, but I do understand it.
No, I mean, that's the kind of perspective that I think is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this with you guys, because I know my side and I know the band side, but there's, you know, unfortunately there's 100,000 of these stories a year of people that died. Mm-hmm. You know, so, you know, this is something that I think was one of the reasons that I wanted to do this with you guys. And I didn't, you know, you guys have created an avenue. And I think that it's important for things like this to be discussed. Because like Muttley was saying to you, he had never experienced this in his life before. Never had a family member, never had a friend, never was that close to somebody. I mean, we were close. Been all over the world together. That dude is my brother, you know, and he would do anything for me. And, you know, like I was, you know, just saying earlier, is like, you could want to do anything in the world for me, but I wasn't ready to accept anything in the world. And you know, and I'm sorry about your boy Jay. I don't want that to get lost in this.
Hey, he was a grown man who made his own decisions. I went to his funeral. I said my piece. I said my piece to him ahead of time when I found out that, you know, he came to our friend's funeral and was shooting up in the bathroom at the funeral. Like, I was like, look, bro, you know, you're my boy. I love you, but I can't just sit and watch this. So you're on your own. When you're clean, let me know.
And I think that is the best possible thing that you could do. There are people who could have helped him, but he needed to want that help more than anything else in the world. And there was a time in my life where my feelings about what I wanted out of life changed. And I can't explain to you why it happened, but it did. And I'm grateful today. But
so, all right, you've spiraled down. Mm-hmm. The band has taken notice. What happened? The band went on hiatus?
Not yet.
Well, we took notice that something was going on, and things, as we said, there was a rapid decline. That 2008 moment was really small, but things started to build over time. There was a lot of tension, like I said, mainly between the two of us. And as we hit 2010, I had a lot of personal stuff going on going into the summer, and we had booked a bunch of shows. Like, probably for that summer, we probably booked somewhere between 8 and 10 shows. And we were supposed to play one show, and we had a practice booked before the show, and nobody could reach Malone. He just completely dropped off face of the earth, wasn't picking up his phone, wasn't reachable, wasn't returning calls, nothing. We had no idea what happened.
I don't even remember that. That's how fucked up that is.
This was when it really hit.
So you canceled all the shows?
We ended up canceling practice and canceling that show because honestly, we had no idea where dude was. No clue. We were totally at a loss because this had never happened before. Dude just disappeared.
Now, I had held a job up until 2000, and that went the way of the White Buffalo. And at that point, so in 2010, I'll give you a little. So my addiction in 2010 had reached a place where I was doing probably between, let's say 8 and 10 80 milligram Oxycontins a day. So you're talking,
640 to 800 milligrams a day, which is insane.
Right.
That's enough to kill a fucking horse.
Right. And somewhere in that time frame, I was spending too much money on Oxycontin, and I went to meet a guy to buy some pills off of him in the parking lot of a pharmacy, and the pharmacy didn't have the pills, and I was dope sick. And he tossed me a bundle of heroin, and I went into the bathroom of the pharmacy, and I snorted 2 bags. And I remember driving out of the pharmacy parking lot, and it instantly clicked in my mind the scene in Pulp Fiction after John Travolta fixes up and he's in that 65 Malibu convertible.
And he's just floating while driving.
Right. Yep. And then I was like, oh. And honestly, it was probably the worst day of my life, if I look back. And I never had to worry about a pharmacy having it. I never had to worry about, I still did a ton of pills. I mean, at that point, I was doing a lot of cocaine, a lot of pills, a lot of heroin all the time. I mean, when they were like, we don't know where dude was, dude, I don't know where dude was. I was probably in some building with some people that I never saw again and never saw before. I don't know.
Kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. So if we'll take a sidebar into my private life at this time, basically cut off from my family. They were still dealing with me, but they all knew what was up because I had lost my apartments at that time. I was living at home. I was living in an apartment above my grandparents' house. My life was a complete and utter mess. Yeah. And things got even worse from there. So they canceled that. Well, you guys canceled that show in the practice. And didn't we play one more show though? Didn't we play Red Star Bar?
That was before all of this.
Okay,
because that Red Star Bar show was the beginning of July, and I think the next show and the practice was maybe 2 weeks later. Something like that. It was definitely in July because we had other shows booked for July and August. And I think we had a weekend going out to Altoona, Pennsylvania, and then a couple of other things set up.
There was a tour with Line of Scrimmage that we didn't do.
Line of Scrimmage was on that weekend.
Yeah, I can't even really remember all that stuff. I wasn't an active part of the band at that point, honestly. I could show up for practice. Sometimes I could show up for a show once every month or every couple of months, but I was not an active member of Billy Club at that point. My main concern was how I was gonna get high.
Right.
Now, if I remember right, and I could be wrong, I think we finally found out that something really bad was going on from somebody that worked at the studio where we practiced, who somehow had a connection to a dealer or something, and I think when we canceled the practice, they told Glenn, I forget the details of it, but I think they knew that something was really up.
Yeah.
And they said something to Glenn, and Glenn was like, how the fuck am I finding this out from the studio guy?
Right.
But it turned out the studio guy knew a dealer or something, and that there was money in the mix, and it was a big, huge mess. And at that point, that was when we canceled the practice and the show, and we were like, well, what the fuck are we going to do here? And we didn't cancel everything else yet, but we were ready to pull the trigger on it because we knew something real bad was going on.
Yeah, he was actually related to the guy.
Okay.
And then you guys approached me about it, like, who's this guy? And again, at that point, it's just another piece of the puzzle falling out of the puzzle. You know, my whole puzzle was just...
Well, what it seemed like was that there was a whole house of cards building, and that was when the whole house fell apart. And we made the decision... I forget if we did this before or after we all met in the parking lot, which was still in the summer. I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
But we made the decision to pull the plug. I think we might have met first. I think we might have met with you first, and you admitted to what was going on because there were some serious... I mean, it's up to you if you want to give any details of this. Go ahead. I would say there were very serious consequences potentially for a bunch of stuff that was going on that we found out about from various people, including potential legal issues. And when we got word of that, we realized what was going on and how bad it was. And at that point, we were like, okay, we got to hit the brakes on this whole fucking thing. And we had a meeting. All four of us spoke in, what was it, the Applebee's parking lot?
Yeah.
In Mamaroneck. And we had a meeting, and Malone copped to everything that was going on, that he had a serious issue and that he had got himself in some very serious trouble. And there were a lot of things involved, money issues and potential police issues. And he had really gotten himself into some deep shit. And he asked for our help and our support. And at that point, we spoke, and then we had another meeting amongst ourselves, and we said, we're just going to have to hit the brakes on this thing. We canceled all the shows, and we were like, okay, we're just going to have to see what happens. But as of now, we're not doing anything.
And how long did that last for?
We didn't know how long it was going to last initially. We didn't put any kind of time frame on it. We just said, listen, this dude's got to handle his shit. And if and when he handles his shit, then we could start talking about being a band again. But part of that also was that there was all this tension, which now we understood at least part of what was causing it. Because like I said, all this time, all this stuff was going on. We didn't really know what the fucking issue was.
Well, and also, I would just lie and be like, you guys are fucking nuts. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Right. And that was something that really bothered me, because here I am trying to help, dude, and I'm being told that it's me, and I know it's not me. So I'm just getting more and more frustrated with it. Plus, I have other stuff bubbling.
Yep.
You know, between relationship problems, other friend problems, plus I was at the point with the job that I had, I was expecting to go any day and find the place padlocked because my boss was running into money troubles and trying to hide it, but yet I have access to everything because I'm the number 2. So I'm finding out that he's looking at subletting half the office, and that he's also looking at possibly moving, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm not going to have a job too much longer. So all this stuff is all hitting at the same time.
And while there were sidebars going on and Billy Club was, Martin, Glenn, and Muttley were having these sidebars and discussing me and what was going on in my life, the real tension in the band was between me and Muttley, and I would play the others against him at times. And so he, to his credit, knew something was wrong before the other guys and wasn't afraid to approach me about it for a long time. And I just denied it. So there was this like headbutting going on between Muttley and I that was creating problems for him and Glenn, between him and Glenn, between him and Martin.
Yeah, because suddenly the three of us are arguing about shit,
that
and
you
in
had
the
no
end,
business
it's
arguing
really
about.
It's all coming from that.
It's all coming
tension,
from me. Yeah.
Yeah, that tension between the two of us was just creating tension with everybody else because, like I mentioned before, these guys are just sick of us fucking fighting and sick of us being at odds all the time.
Right. So,
and I mentioned, you know, in the past, in my old band, I was the middleman in that when other guys weren't getting along. So I understood their frustration, but in the end, everybody's fucking frustrated, and nobody's having any fun. So it's like, yeah, we got these shows booked, but like, and for me, listen, from the second I joined Billy Club was always my number one thing. And I always put everything I had into it. Mm-hmm. Like I said, being up late nights, emailing people, booking shows, making contacts, different places. So it was frustrating for me because there wasn't a payoff. Like I was doing this stuff, and it's not even like I get to enjoy the fruits of it.
Right.
Because even if we're playing a show, it got to the point things were so bad. It's like,
you know, we're playing shows, and I'm snorting pills in the bathroom, and I'm leaving the venue to go cop pills in a fucking town that I don't know because I met some dude,
or we go to a show. We're going to a show. We're playing a show. I'm playing in an earlier band also, and Malone's got my bass, and now suddenly he's late to the show, so I'm supposed to play with this earlier band, and I don't have a fucking bass.
Right.
Shit like that. So that tension was just growing and growing and growing, and it was frustrating for me because we've talked about it 100 times on this podcast with different guests we've had. We're certainly not doing this shit for the money.
Right. It's supposed to be fun.
So if I'm not even having fun, then what the fuck am I doing this for? And it got to the point where we were at practice, and I was announcing to the guys, I'm like, listen, I got to step back from doing the business for a little while because I got to concentrate on these other things. But I got to tell you, it's because I'm not having fun right now. Like, this is supposed to be fun. We've also been doing this for so long, it should be getting easier, yet it's getting harder. So yeah. I'm banging my head against the fucking wall just trying to do basic things that we've been doing from the beginning that's basic for any band is going to book a show. So why is it so hard to book a goddamn show?
Well, because your guitar player is fucking knee-deep in a fucking vicious opiate addiction.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, like, so at that point, we had to talk, and my plan was this. I was going to go get the surgery that I needed to get done.
Which was the shoulder.
Shoulder surgery. I had to have total shoulder reconstructive surgery. I had, by this time, this is 20 years after I injured it the first time, and I just continued to abuse it. My shoulder was dislocating somewhere between 35 and 60 times a day. Partial dislocations.
Ugh.
All of the ligaments and tendons that hold the shoulder in the socket on the front side are either severed or stretched out. Mm-hmm. I got a torn labrum, so they had to attach the ones that I had severed. They had to cut all the other tendons and shorten them. They had to fix my labrum. And so my plan was, okay, I'm going to do this surgery. I'll get out of surgery. I'll be on painkillers for a while. And then I'm going to go into an IOP. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if anybody knows what IOP is, but it's intensive outpatient. So you don't go to an inpatient rehab where you're in a facility. You go to an outpatient. You know, if it's methadone, you go every day. If it's Suboxone, you go once a week, and they give you your stuff. And that was my plan. And I did that. There were still some hiccups in there, but I found my way into an IOP, and I went on Suboxone a couple of months after the surgery. Suboxone is a opioid. It's a partial agonist opioid that is made to help people get off of heroin, help people get off of OxyContin.
Because it it blocks the receptors, but still provides you with some of the benefit from what you would have gotten from the opioid.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a partial. So the opiate in it is Subutex. It's a partial agonist opiate, which means that it doesn't really get you high if you're an opiate addict. It latches onto your opioid receptors, and naloxone, which is the other ingredient in Suboxone, is an opioid blocker.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to say take an opioid while on it, it doesn't work.
Right. It kind of just does nothing.
It's an inhibitor.
Right.
It's like a spermicide. Shoot it down. Bang,
Yeah.
bang, bang.
Bang, bang, bang. So eventually I did that. And I got myself back on my feet a bit, and I got a job. And my personal life, things were starting to change, right? For about 5 or 6 months, I was doing well. I was taking my Suboxone daily. I was going to work every day. And the problem is that in my intensive outpatient, there was nothing done about my depression, PTSD, any of those things. I had been dealing with a lot of shit. And about 6 months or so, or 7 months into my IOP, because I kept pissing hot for cocaine. So I was taking my Suboxone, but I was still smoking weed and taking Xanax and doing cocaine because I still wanted to get high. I didn't. I was treating a symptom of my addiction. Right. I was treating the opioid symptom of my addiction. I wasn't doing anything for my mental stability, my emotional stability, my mental illness, nothing. And I relapsed. I kept going in and pissing hot for cocaine, and the doctor that would prescribe me Suboxone would be like, "You tested positive for cocaine again." And like, if you know anything about like cocaine leaves your system in like 20 hours. Yeah, so like I was like, snorting cocaine on my way to get to the doctor. Like, all I had to do was not do it for 2 days and I wouldn't piss hot.
Right.
But again, I wasn't ready to get clean. I didn't have any tools. I didn't have any coping mechanisms. I didn't have any way to, I would find out later, like what it was or what I needed to do, but I didn't know what that was at the time. I had never attempted to get clean before. This was my first time. I had never, ever attempted. I thought that it'd be fine. I just had to stop doing opiates, and it's cool. I'll smoke weed. I'll drink. I was going out. I started to hang out with Glenn again. I'd go out with Glenn in the city, and I'd drink, 17 vodkas. And
you
like
pickle yourself, basically.
Well, right. And like, one of the things about Suboxone is like you could drink like a maniac, do all the cocaine you want. It's like you don't really feel it that as much as you would if you weren't. So eventually,
and I think you and I were still in touch at that point.
We were, because I
was working in Hartsdale, and you and I had lunch a few times.
And I was high on cocaine during that lunch.
Yeah, which I didn't know, because we had hung out a few times and talked and hashed out or thought we had hashed out a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
But little did I know you were fucking flying at the time.
Right. So I'm working down in Queens. I'm working on Northern and Bell Boulevard at a Chrysler dealership. Now, again, anybody knows anything about fucking car dealerships, you can get any drug you want inside the car dealership. So a guy there, I was on Suboxone, and a guy there had Coke. So I was like, all right, cool, some Coke, And what happened is that we had a really good month, and the owner took us out to a billiard hall across the street. There's a billiard hall on the corner of Bell and Northern Boulevard. It's a pretty famous one. I don't remember the name of it, but it's been there for
I know
years.
which place you're talking about, because I spent much time in that White Castle that's on that corner.
As did I. I worked there. I was in that White Castle times a week.
Many nights drunk as shit in that White Castle.
Yeah. So we go there. One of the salesmen's like, yo, I'm drinking. I do a beer a shot. And one of the salesmen's like, yo, come in the bathroom with me. Go in the bathroom. I snort a couple of key bumps of coke. And he's like, like, I thought you liked coke. And I was like, yeah, but my thing is like OxyContin. He's like, oh, word? I was like, yeah. He's like, yo, I got like 6 of them in my car right now. And I was like, I'll buy them. And so check this out. This is hand of God. Went out there. He sold me them. I took them. And I did them. And then next morning I went to work and I was like, yo, where did you get those oxys? He's like, oh, my cousin has a script and she lives in the LES. Mm-hmm. I was like, yo, so we could get some right now? He's like, yeah. So that day I bought $650 worth of OxyContin.
Oh.
And I was gone. And I had that job for maybe 2 more months. And then I really started to hit rock bottom. Which
that's how it is. That's really, I mean, you thought you hit bottom, but it really wasn't there yet. You just hit a plateau, but there was still some more to go.
So,
well, just to cut in for a second. Just to cut in for a second, while all of that was going on, we were still cool, but then we got the word that he was using the whole time and was back in rehab, and we were all just like, fuck.
That didn't happen yet, though.
No? Okay.
No.
I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah, so then I was pretty much wound up being, I wouldn't say homeless, like living in the street, but I was living out of my car, and I still had a car, and no one would allow me into the house, so like I couldn't stay with my mother no more. I had burnt every bridge pretty much that I ever had, and so basically what would happen is that I would show up every week or two at a relative's house, and they would let me come in, they would give me a hot meal, they would let me take a shower and sleep indoors. But then I had to leave in the morning when they would go to work, because I would steal anything that wasn't fucking nailed down. And I would pawn it, or I would trade it, or I pawned every guitar I ever had, Len. I pawned the Iommi SG, I pawned the Will Adler ESP, I pawned everything I had, I sold everything I had.
Did you sell things that you did, like other band member stuff that wasn't yours?
No, I never stole anything from the dudes in Billy Club, and I never stole any money from Billy Club, probably because I never had access to it.
If we still had the monthly room,
yeah,
because we had stopped with the monthly room for a couple of years before we had stopped. If we still had the monthly room, I think this story would have been very different.
So when Breath of Silence was still in the practice spot in Patterson, Jay was unpacking our van after a show, and he told me that my rack gear, somebody ran up and stole it while he was loading everything in, and I had to believe him because what else am I going to do? But looking back, I'm 100% sure he just sold my shit.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm not going to sit here and act fucking noble, because I was a fucking heroin addict, okay? And a heroin addict will do anything to get a fix. Now, I never did I never sucked nobody's dick, okay? Or some shit like that. But like, I robbed people. I stole shit from people. I beat people's ass and robbed them for drugs. Like, it was ugly, okay? And when I told you earlier that I'm a crazy motherfucker, like, I mean, there's some stories that, like, you know, I can't even believe I did them. Mm-hmm. Like I robbed a drug dealer once. That's what I was doing, right? So, like, I'm from the suburbs, bro. And you get a lot of these kids come out and they think that they hard and shit. And I would find a kid that was like in his mid-20s that, thought he was slick selling pills, and then I would strong arm him.
Right.
And so, I remember beating a dude down in front of his girlfriend at broad daylight in a fucking parking lot, in a strip mall parking lot. She's screaming, and
didn't matter to you at the moment.
No. So I'm not gonna sit here and try to act noble like I didn't steal from Billy Club. They put me at arm's length way before I got there.
Right.
And because if the opportunity was there, I probably would have.
Mm-hmm.
I stole from my mother, bro. I can't sit here and be like, oh, and I'm not proud of any of that. Not beating the kid up, not any of that.
No, you're just telling the story how it is.
Right. And so, if anything, like I said, so anyway, a lot of that kind of crazy shit is going on at that time. So, and I'm escaping legal ramifications of this by the fucking skin of my teeth. I have never been convicted of a crime.
Okay.
I've never been I've never snitched on nobody, but I've also never been convicted of even a misdemeanor. Now, the other part of that is that I got to think that has to do with my skin color, okay? Because I don't live in a world where I don't see what goes on in this fucking world. So, I don't know how, right? But I know that maybe if I wasn't white, that wouldn't be the case. And that's fucked up. But that's the truth of the country we live in, right?
Uh-huh.
And, I'd be a fucking idiot if I thought differently or in denial or some shit. But so we get to a point where I owe money all over town. I've stolen money all over town. My name ain't worth a shit. And one day my uncle says, well, I'm off of work. Just come stay with me for a couple days. Take a shower. I'll feed you. So I go over there and I'm there. And I could barely shower. Because when you're dope sick, you're fucked up, man. I don't wish that upon anyone. Your whole body hurts. You have the flu fully. You can't hold any food down. You're fucked up. And I don't know. I couldn't get any drugs anywhere. I couldn't rob anybody. And I scrounged up $80 and I got I don't know, some kind of pills. Shitty ones that I didn't want. I couldn't find any heroin. And I woke up the next day and I didn't have any more fight left in me. I wasn't going to be able to go on another day of trying to find a score or, I just didn't have it in me. I was just, every morning when I woke up at that point, I was like, fuck, I'm still here. I wish I had just died last night.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have the balls to kill myself, but I had lost the will to live. And I didn't want to. I knew one thing is that if I was going to live, I didn't want it to be this way anymore. And I got on a laptop at my uncle's house and I started looking up detox centers. And I didn't know what else to do, but I knew that an IOP wasn't going to work, and I knew that I was going to have to go away for a long time. And I called my mother, and she was at school. She's a teacher. And she answered the phone. I can only imagine what she was thinking when the phone rang in the middle of the morning and she was in a class. But I said, hey, I need you to take me to a detox. And she said, I'll come get you right now. And I went outside and I smoked a joint that was like the size of this cup. And with my uncle, and my mother came, and I went to Sound Shore Medical, to the 7th floor, the detox and mental illness unit. And that was the beginning of my life changing.
So we're going to take a break, and we will come back next week with part 2 of our conversation with Malone Ranalli from Billy Club Sandwich. The upgradepodcast.net is the place to go for all the social media links. And we will see you next week with part 2. Peace.
Peace.